Last summer, I went on Ultimate Europe with EF Ultimate Break. It's their 35-day trip all across 9 different countries and all the biggest highlights of Europe. I went ahead and asked you guys to ask me all your questions on social media, and today I'm going to be answering all of them. But before we jump in, let me introduce myself. My name is Vivian Hennekins, and I make all kinds of fun travel and lifestyle content from all across the globe. I'd love to have you subscribe down below so you can follow along on my next epic adventure through Egypt. Now let's jump into the questions. So the first question is, what made you decide to go on the Ultimate Europe trip with EF Ultimate Break? The main reason that I chose to go on this trip with EF Ultimate Break was just kind of the way that timing all played out, I guess. I had just graduated college and I really wanted to go and travel, but I didn't have anyone to go with, and my mom is a little overprotective and she didn't want me to go solo by myself because this was one of the first times I was going out of the country by myself. So after a little bit of research, I found EF and I decided that that was the best trip for me. I'd only ever been to France, so I wasn't really sure exactly where I wanted to travel in depth in Europe. So this trip was really nice because you got to go to all of the highlights, and then from there you can decide, oh hey, like I really liked Greece, for example, and Italy, and I would love to go back one day as soon as possible. Next question is, I'm stressed about packing. How did you prepare for a 35-day trip to Europe? I can't lie, it was kind of hard to plan and prepare everything. It was hard to figure out what to pack and all of that, but I did actually just make a full in-depth packing video. You can watch that right over here. In the video, I went over all of the clothes that I packed, as well as any other random bits and bobs that I was really happy to have on the trip with me. But I guess really the biggest thing is just to start planning things in advance. It's a big trip. 5 weeks is a long time to prepare for, so just make sure you give yourself enough time to feel fully ready for the trip. What was your favorite country you visited and why? I think for me, Italy was probably my favorite country that we had visited on the trip. I mean, it is Italy, there's really not much to hate about it. The food in Italy was just so incredible. I literally dream about it all the time. My cacio e pepe and Ugo spritzes are unforgettable. I also think that Italy may have been my favorite because we spent the longest time in Italy out of all of the 9 countries we visited. I think in total we stayed in Italy for about a week, which is quite a lot longer than we stayed in a lot of the other countries, but that's just because we visited so many cities in Italy. And Italy alone, we went to Venice, Florence, and Rome, but we also had little day trips to the Burano Islands and to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But I will say Greece is definitely my second place country from that trip. Was it hard to deal with the language barriers in different countries? I will say this was one that I was a little bit worried about in some of the countries just because I wasn't like totally sure what to expect, but I actually didn't really have any problems with it. I only speak a little bit of French, and my friend Kennedy spoke a little bit of Italian, but basically we were just winging it with English the entire time. We would still make sure to learn some of the basic phrases like hello and thank you in each of the languages, just so we could be polite and respectful. But most of the locals do know enough English for you guys to communicate pretty well. And I think that's mostly because the itinerary is based on just the highlights of Europe, so they're gonna be more touristy places than other places in those countries. I don't think any of my friends were gonna make it. Did you feel safe going alone? Yes, I felt 100% safe going by myself. Although you are in a group of like 35 to 40 people, there's a ton of free time where you could wander off and do whatever you want on your own. And while yes, a lot of the time it was me and Kennedy hanging out together, there were times where me and her went and did our own things. And I always felt safe walking around where I was. But also take into consideration that I was making sure to stay in more populated areas. I wasn't gonna walk down any sketchy alleyways or anything like that. And I also wasn't ever walking alone at night. You will definitely make a ton of friends on this trip, but even if you still want to go out and walk around and do things on your own, you'll be totally fine. Just make sure to stay aware of your surroundings and your belongings and you'll be fine. Kind of going along with the last one, I'm nervous about making friends. What was the group dynamic like? So our group consisted of like 40 kids. Like, I won't lie, it's a big group. There's a lot of personalities and there's a pretty big age range there too, all the way from 18 to 35. So I get where things can get kind of messy at times. And 5 weeks is also a long time to be spending with the same group of people. You're with your group pretty much every single day, so I get how it's easy for people to get tired of each other towards the end of the trip, which I will say definitely happened. But as far as any like actual drama, there like really wasn't much actual drama. After like the first 2 weeks, everyone had kind of figured out like their little friend group, and you know, you'd have like little groups go off and like do their own thing. I don't want to sound like I'm calling anyone out, but I guess yeah, like sometimes groups can get a little cliquey, but I guess that's just the nature of things. That's just life, unfortunately, but it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to involve yourself in any of that. Just stick with whoever you want to hang out with, go with the flow, and just remember it's literally not that serious. You're probably never going to see a lot of these people ever again after these 35 days. So yeah, don't cause any drama. Don't feed into any of it either. You guys are all there for the same thing. You're all there just to travel and have fun and explore. So let it just be that. I'm trying to think if our group had any drama, and I like really don't think we did. There was a little bit of like cattiness with some people towards the end of the trip, but you know, like I said, 35 days is a long time to be with the same people every single day for multiple hours a day. But the group dynamic was fine, and I'm still friends with quite a few people, and we also like keep up with each other on social media and whatnot, so I don't think you have anything to worry about. The next question is, how did you manage your budget while traveling for so long? I get questions all the time about budgeting and like how much extra money I spent, and I would say it ranged from like $50 to like $150 per day. It really just kind of depended what was going on. But that daily budget is definitely going to heavily depend on what your travel style is like. You're definitely going to want to put aside some money for souvenir shopping, even if you think you're not going to buy anything. Because trust me, you're going to find something that you're going to fall in love with and you're going to want to take it home. Hence most of these objects behind me. I am personally drawn to breakables and art and jewelry and like little knick-knacky things like that. But whatever it is for you, make sure you have the budget saved up. Breakfast was included every single day of the trip, and then we had a handful of dinners that were included, like the hello dinner and the farewell dinner, as well as a couple other dinners that came with different excursions that we had. Normally for lunch, if we weren't having it with the group that day, I would just try to keep it simple, more like a grab and go style of lunch versus a sit down lunch, because normally during lunchtime is when we were out and exploring, so we didn't want to waste a bunch of time sitting down to eat at a restaurant. But then for dinner, most of the time me and Kennedy would go out to a restaurant and sit down together. But it's really up to you, whatever you prefer. Just make sure you plan it out in advance so you're prepared. Did the trip meet your expectations? Yes, and honestly, this trip pretty much blew my expectations out of the water. Going into the trip, I had like a rough idea of what to expect, but it was just so much better than what I had envisioned. And I think a lot of that had to do with our tour director, Marios. He planned so many extra activities and excursions for us all throughout the trip and was just so knowledgeable and such a great resource to have. I was fully expecting to feel kind of like lost in all of the cities too, but I really didn't. I felt pretty prepared going into all of them, and our tour director, Marios, also always gave us kind of a brief rundown of like do's and don'ts going into each of the new countries. So yeah, the itinerary totally like exceeded my expectations. The accommodations were pretty much exactly what I expected, maybe even a little bit better because they were in amazing locations. We were always pretty central to all of the main sites in each of the cities that we were in, which made things super convenient just to walk around to. I think one thing that people can get bummed out about is the accommodations, but I think it's because not everyone does enough research, so not everyone realizes that they have different travel styles. They have the essential style and the plus style, and with the essential style, you're gonna have up to 6 roommates, 2 to 6 roommates, and it definitely varied throughout the trip. Sometimes we did have 6, sometimes I only had 1 other roommate, sometimes we were in a hostel, sometimes we were in a hotel. It was mostly hostels, but they were all fine. Like, they all served their purpose. They were all clean, well kept, good enough, well located, safe, all the good things. They don't need to be anything crazy or luxury anyways, so it all was great. What was the most challenging aspect of the trip? The hardest part of the trip was trying to remember what Mario said, that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's 35 days. 5 weeks is a long time to be up and go and traveling every single day like that. So you have to make sure you're still giving your body rest. You're not going out and partying every single night, and you're still eating nutritious food sometimes. Just, you know, make sure you're still doing what you can to keep like yourself all intact and all in check so you're not getting sick. But I will say also, like, don't be surprised if you do get sick. I feel like everyone at some point on the trip got sick, whether it was like a cold or a stomach bug, or it was like a cold of some sort. But yeah, just do what you can to stay healthy during the trip. And remember, you can come back to these countries one day. It's okay to not squeeze in every single thing on your list that you wanted to do. Just pick and choose your favorites and let the day take you where it will. Next question is, did I ever get homesick during the trip? Personally, no. Not really. I'm like, I love my family so much, but no, like, I really didn't get homesick at all because the trip is so go, go, go. It is so fast paced that you're not really like, I don't know, thinking about what's going on back home. I mean, I would still like call my family when the times were convenient and things like that. I'd text my parents pictures of what we were doing throughout the trip, but I never felt homesick, and honestly, I probably could have stayed in Europe for another 5 weeks. I was having so much fun. How was the food during the trip? Well, coming from a very picky eater, I'm not sure I'm the best one to have this opinion, but I thought the food was fine. It was fine. And I'm judging the food meaning like the breakfast that were included and like the couple of dinners and lunches that were included. I thought it was fine. I'd give it like a solid 8 out of 10. Like it's not, well, maybe an 8 is a little high. I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10. Yeah, it was fine. You had all your basic foods. There was nothing like crazy to complain about or crazy to rave about. It was all good. Moving on, did you have any challenges during the trip? I didn't have any challenges really like logistics wise, but the main challenge that I was dealing with all throughout the trip was my anxiety. Going on this trip was a pretty big deal for me and my anxiety, and it was something that I mentally worked on with my therapist in the months leading up to the trip, so I did feel very prepared going on the trip, but nonetheless, anxiety is anxiety, you know? Sometimes you have your days, sometimes you don't, so there were some days that I struggled a little bit more than others, and at least like with me and my anxiety, the mornings can be kind of hard for me sometimes, so, you know, there were a couple mornings when we had to get up and check out and just hit the road really early, and those mornings were kind of hard for me, but Marios, our tour director, and all of the other friends that I had on the trip were always like really understanding and just trying to be supportive in any way that they could, which I really appreciated. But no, the anxiety wasn't a major issue. It was just kind of something that popped up from time to time throughout the trip. But I never let it get to me, and overall the trip with my anxiety, it all went great and I was really proud of myself. Did you have any free time to explore on your own, and if so, what did you do? Yes, we had a ton of free time in each of the cities to go and explore. It kind of depended on what the schedule was like, so sometimes we had a full day to explore, sometimes it was just like a half day of free time. And in terms of what we did, I guess it just kind of depended on like where we were and kind of how we were feeling that day. There were some days where we literally didn't have any plans and we were just like frolic around the streets and explore and just kind of see what we stumbled upon. But then there were other days like when we wanted to go and visit the Coliseum, where we had that booked in advance because we knew that we wanted to do it. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily book too many things in your trip in advance before the trip, because when you get there you're going to be making friends with everyone and you're going to want to make plans with them, so just don't schedule out like too many other things, I guess I would say. Me personally, I didn't have anything planned. I just showed up and kind of went with the flow, and we just kind of figured it out as we went. What was the transportation like between the different cities and countries? I would say our main form of transportation was our good old tour bus. We took this bus pretty much everywhere, and it was comfortable. Like the seats were great, we had lights, AC, it was great. She served her purpose well. When we weren't in the tour bus, I think we took one flight, an overnight ferry boat, which was actually really cute in Amsterdam. Love that. We also took the Eurostar from London to Paris, which was like super cute and fun, as well as a little ferry boat to get from Athens to Paros. And then when we were in the city, it was kind of up to us what we wanted to do. So sometimes we would take the public transportation, like the metro or the bus system, and then other times if we had somewhere to be and needed to get there quickly, we would just like call an Uber or take a taxi. And if we were kind of just frolicking around, my favorite form of transportation was renting the little like Lime scooters and bikes and just kind of letting the day take you where it goes. Okay, this next one is a good one. What advice would you give to someone considering the ultimate Europe trip? I always say that this is the perfect trip for the kind of traveler who likes to stay on the move, keep things rolling at a good pace, while also having enough time to explore on their own. This is not the kind of vacation where we just relax on the beach all day. We are moving and grooving the entire time, and if that's your style, you will love this trip. This trip is perfect for any first-time travelers because, like I said, you're getting to see all of the highlights, so then you can decide what countries you want to go back one day and explore more in depth. Like for example, I'm going back to both Italy and Greece this summer and I am so excited. I also think this trip is so perfect for solo travelers. On my trip, the group was probably like 70% solo travelers, so pretty much everyone was out there on their own and you guys all have the same mindset. You're all there to explore and make friends, so it's really just such a great environment for solo travelers. Alright, I feel like I've been talking forever, so the last question is, would you go on another EF Ultimate Break trip in the future? And the answer is yes, of course, and I already have. Since going on Ultimate Europe, I've been on the Egypt Cruise the Nile trip as well as the Kenya African Safari trip. I've had an equally as amazing experience on both of these trips as I did with Ultimate Europe, and I'm so excited to keep traveling with EF. And I am a brand ambassador with EF as well, so if you're interested in booking any of their trips, you can book with my link in the description below to save an extra $100 off on top of any sales they might be having going on. And thanks so much if you choose to book with my link. It helps to support the channel and keep all the travel content coming. Thanks so much for watching this Q&A. If you thought it was helpful, please give me a thumbs up and leave any of your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Next up, we're going to be diving into my Egypt series, so make sure you subscribe as well so you don't miss out. And if you'd like to watch my 35 days of Ultimate Europe, you can watch the entire playlist right over here. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.